Yeah, so as you can see from that clip, that woman that was just speaking was in the Democratic Party, and that was a clip that was taken in 2023 when Joe Biden was president. All right, so it doesn't matter whether it's Trump with the Republicans or Biden with the Democrats. They're just both as bad as each other. You know, she was saying that China's in their backyard, like they own the whole of Latin America. You know, I mean the audacity of them, man. But that's in the scriptures anyway. All right, it just proves that America's that great whore. You know, that rides the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. All right, this is Revelations 13 and 11. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth. All right, and that beast is the Roman Empire, but it's a revival of the Roman Empire. All right, America, because America takes on all the philosophies of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. You know, when it has its vassal states, has its Congress, has its Senate. Okay, and you have that in America today. You have a Congress, a Senate, all right, and you have a two-party system. Back then, in the pagan Roman Empire, it was the plebeians and the patricians. So they had like a two-party system, but they were just both as bad as each other. All right. Now it's the same with Republicans and Democrats. All right. So I held another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. All right. 2 horns like a lamb. All right. And he spake as a dragon. See, there's that word dragon again. He spake as a dragon. All right. Now the 2 horns represents what? Their two-party system, the Republicans and the Democrats. And back then, in ancient pagan Roman Empire, it was the plebeians and the patricians. Okay. And a lamb is loving, tender, etc. But look what it says. It says 2 horns like a lamb. All right. But he spake as a dragon. All right. And a dragon is a fierce creature. Okay. All right. And what does that remind you of? Draconian measures. And that's how the Roman Empire was. And that's how America is. And the more we get down, the closer we get to prophecy, it's going to become a lot worse. All these business with the ICE agents going out, taking any person that is black or brown, all right, that's going to escalate, man. Okay? And you so-called white people are now, you're getting killed. Okay? That's another proof that, this empire is going down. Because the people that have privilege are being shot by the ICE cops. And they don't give a damn. Neither does the leadership in this country. Okay? Let's go ahead. 2 horns. Let's click on it.
Strong's G 2768. Keras. Keras.
Keras, which means what? Alright, Keras, that means horns, right? What does it mean? Horn of animals. Alright, it's the main one here. A mighty and valiant helper. Alright, a mighty and valiant helper. The author of deliverance of the Messiah. Okay? So you go to this land, alright? And you go there for help. You think that the government's going to help you, whether it be the Republicans or the Democrats. All right, those 2 horns. But they spake as a dragon. They're both against you. All right? And they're both a part of this new world order. That's why that woman in the Biden camp was saying, no, they're in our backyard. So it doesn't matter whether it's Republicans or Democrats. They both, speak like a dragon, man. And all of these laws that they're bringing in is to take away your rights, to get you shaped for this new world order. All right? And this beast system. I've got here. two horns, you know. So you go to the government for help, all right, and you think they're gonna help you, but they're both as bad as each other, and that's a good reflection of how 12 tribes of Israel is being treated in America. You know, doesn't matter whether you vote Republicans or Democrats, they're not gonna help you, man. All right, there are no heroes. Okay, the only hero, the only savior we have is Yahushua. Okay, all right. And when you look at the, and this is what it's all leading to, all right, the MOTB. Even Stevie Wonder can see that, man. Okay, but let me show you something here, because if you look at the American president, right, the American president has this limousine that all the presidents have, and what is the name of that limousine? It's the Beast. That's what it's called. It's called the Beast. I remember hearing it on the news, and I looked it up, and it is. All right, let me see if I can get more on it here. All right, the U.S. president car is officially a custom-built Cadillac limousine nicknamed the Beast. You know, nicknamed the Beast. So out of all the names you can give it, why did they give it the name the Beast, man? Okay, because they know that America is that fourth beast, all right, whose deadly wound was healed, all right, and they're loose for a little season. So the Lord is giving us clues here, man. All right, so the president's car, custom built. I think it's got bulletproof glasses and all this stuff. All right, all of that armor and all that kind of stuff. All right, that limousine is called what? The Beast. Okay, so they know what time it is, man. Okay, they know what time it is. Let me go here. They know what time it is. Go Revelation 13 again. Because this man has weakened the other nations with his damn philosophies, man. But if you look back at ancient Rome, right, and the way it fell exactly the way America's fallen. All right, is history is just repeating itself. Okay, that's all that's happening, man. All right, Revelations 13 and 12, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, the Roman Empire, and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound, all right, was healed. Okay, and that's what this system is about. They're putting in place all the infrastructure, digital IDs, all of these things, all right, so you can worship this beast. But the elect is not going to do that. All right, that lot is not for the elect. All right, let's go to Romans 7,000. Man. Romans 11 and 4. Alright, this is Romans 11 and 4. But what saith the answer of the Most High unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men. 7 is symbolized completion, who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Okay, all right, and that's the elect. So the elect is not gonna worship this beast or take his mark. You know, they ain't gonna do that. But the majority of our people, they are, because you know they're gonna make everything impossible to make it impossible for you to live unless you take the RFID chip, man. All right. And there's a good video here I want to show you. It talks about how Rome declined, right? Okay. But also have a look at this, because China, that's one of the reasons why they did what they did with the Maduro kidnapping, because basically China all right, was doing business with Venezuela and selling, buying their oil in, different currencies, which undermined what the American dollar. The American dollar is the world reserve currency. Okay, so simply just because of that, they concocted all these phony, charges against him and kidnapped him. Now they might look at that as a action of strength. I look at that as an act of weakness, man. All right, because you're only picking on countries that all right, they can't fight back militarily. You wouldn't dare do that in Russia. Go into Russia and see what will happen to you, man. And that's the reason why all these other nations around the world, all right, that's the reason why they're arming themselves, all right, with nuclear weapons, because they don't want to end like Gaddafi, okay? But what's going on in America is really synonymous with what happened to ancient Rome, all right? Have a look at the parallels. This is a good video showing that ancient Rome and the revival of the Roman Empire, which is America, are one and the same.
America is facing intense.
I'm 65.
So, stupid army adverts. And all you Israelites that join the army, man. Man. Hey. You're out of your mind. I would not fight for this devil. Alright? Fight for the kingdom. Your kingdom. This is not our kingdom. This is not our rest. Alright?
Carrying fresh water over horizons. You see the Colosseum, a stadium that holds 50,000 screaming fans. You're standing in the capital of the greatest empire the world has ever known. An empire that spans 3 continents. An empire that has lasted for 1,000 years. If you tapped a Roman citizen on the shoulder and told them that in just 76 years, this entire city would be empty ruins, and the empire would vanish from the face of the earth, they would have laughed in your face. They would call you crazy. Rome is eternal. Rome is invincible. The systems are too big to fail. Now, fast forward to today. Stand in Times Square in New York City. Look at the skyscrapers. Look at the stock tickers flashing record highs. Look at the military power that dominates every ocean on the globe. If I told you that by the year 2026, the foundations of this American empire would irrevocably crack, you would probably have the exact same reaction as that Roman citizen. You would say that America is too big to fail. But history is not a set of random events. It is a blueprint. It is a repeating cycle of rise and fall, driven by unchanging human nature. We are not special. We are just the latest actors in a very old play. And right now, we are in the final act. The scariest thing about the fall of Rome isn't that it happened. It's how eerily similar it looks to our current reality. The parallels are not vague. They are mathematical, they are cultural, and they are undeniable. Rome didn't fall overnight. It succumbed to a slow-acting poison, a specific economic mistake that ate away at its soul until it was too weak to stand. Today, America has ingested that exact same poison. We are showing the exact same symptoms. And according to the historical timeline of empire life cycles, we are fast approaching our own expiration date. The year 2026 is not an arbitrary number. It marks the 250th anniversary of the United States, and 250 years is the historical average lifespan for a global superpower before it undergoes a catastrophic reset. In this video, we are not just going to look at dusty history books. We are going to hold a mirror up to our own civilization. We are going to identify the singular fatal mistake that destroyed Rome and prove to you that America is not only repeating it, but doing it faster and on a much larger scale. To understand the end, we have to understand the beginning. Rome wasn't always corrupt. In its early days, during the Roman Republic, it was a society built on what historians call stoic virtues. It was built by hard men, farmers who became soldiers to defend their land and then returned to farming. There was a deep sense of duty, frugality, and shared destiny. Economically, this was reflected in their money. For centuries, the Roman currency was the silver denarius. It was a coin made of almost pure silver. It was sound money. If you held a denarius, you held actual intrinsic value. You didn't have to trust the government. You only had to trust the metal in your hand. This sound money created a stable foundation. It encouraged savings. It allowed for long-term planning. It funded the roads, the aqueducts, and the mighty legions that conquered the known world. Because the money was real, the economy was real. But success is a dangerous drug. As Rome conquered more territory, immense wealth flooded into the capital. The ruling class stopped being warrior farmers and became wealthy aristocrats. The focus shifted from production to consumption. By the time the Republic died and the Roman Empire began under Augustus Caesar, the seeds of decay were already planted. The empire was vast, stretching from England to Egypt. Maintaining this expanse was incredibly expensive. You had to pay hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed thousands of miles away. You had to build and repair infrastructure across continents, and most importantly, you had to keep the population of Rome happy. This is where the concept of bread and circuses originated. To keep the massive unemployed population of the city from rioting, the emperors provided free grain and massive gladiatorial games. It was the ancient version of welfare and endless entertainment distraction.
See, entertainment distraction. You know, and that's happening right now in America. All right, UFC, and everyone loves this UFC, man. But it's brutal. You know, it's a brutal sport, man. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted. Blood, you know, they're in a kind of like a coliseum. All right, where people are cheering them on. You know. Brutal blood sports, man. Punches to the head. You know, slamming, this, that, and the other. Alright. In ancient Rome, they had that. They had bread and circuses. Where they would pack the Colosseum and they'll have someone doing something to distract the population. And they'll give them bread. You know, this is all distraction. And they're doing the same thing now. But now it's worse because they've got better technology. Okay? They got much better technology, cable TV, all these things to distract you, you know? So there's a method to their madness, okay?
All of this cost enormous amounts of money. The gold and silver looted from conquered nations began to dry up. The expenses of the empire started to outweigh its income. Rome had a budget deficit. Now, an emperor has two choices when faced with a deficit. Choice one is the hard choice. You can cut spending, which makes the citizens angry, or you can raise taxes, which makes the rich, powerful people angry. No emperor wanted to do that. They wanted to be loved. They wanted to be gloried. So they chose the easy path. They chose the fatal mistake. They decided to mess with the money. This is the mechanism of collapse. Pay close attention, because this is exactly where we are today. It started slowly. Around the year 64 AD, Emperor Nero faced a financial crisis. He needed more money to pay his debts and fund his lavish lifestyle. He came up with a devious idea. He gathered up the silver denarius coins, melted them down, and mixed in a small amount of cheap base metals like copper. He then reminted the coins. Suddenly, Nero had more coins to spend. The new denarius looked the same as the old one on the surface. It had the emperor's face on it. It was officially declared to be worth the same amount, but in reality, it had less silver. It had less intrinsic value. This was the ancient version of money printing. Nero had just debased the currency. At first, nobody noticed. The party continued. But subsequent emperors saw how easy this was. If they needed to fund a war, they just added more copper to the silver mix. If they needed to build a new palace, they just debased the currency a little more.
And what does that remind you of today? The dollar, man. All right? It reminds you of the US dollar. That's exactly what they're doing today. Okay? And if you look at the US dollar, all right, it's being devalued by the second. You know? Something here. Where is it? Start of war. Peace. See, America's Rome. Not that one. There's one here I'm trying to find. Hang on. So it's the same. It's nothing new under the sun. And over in America, they're devaluing their dollar, man, by the second. Alright, this is it.
Welcome to the next.
Alright, so watch this. So you can see the parallels, man, because America is just Rome all over again, man. Okay?
Major developments whenever it comes to the status of the U.S. dollar. We did see a very noteworthy clip here from Peter Schiff, who has been very prescient on major collapses. He was on Fox Business, dropping some truth bombs. Here's what he had to say.
And the world is now pulling the rug out from under the U.S. The dollar is going to collapse. The dollar is going to be replaced by gold. Central banks are buying gold to back up their currencies. True. They're getting rid of dollars. They're getting rid of treasuries. We are headed for an economic crisis, again, that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a Sunday school picnic. The biggest difference between the crisis that we're about to have and the one we had back then is this one is all in America.
All right, so all of this is part and parcel, as we've said here in the past, of a major movement against the dollar. Now, I want to be very clear. Even when we say dollar crash, we're talking about like 0.6, 1% or whatever drop. But what this generally can mean in a longer term trend, especially as we started here with global affairs, with wars, with what's going on with Venezuela, the Greenland situation, some reporting that actually behind the scenes, the Danes and the EU had threatened the United States with massively selling off big portions of our debt, is instability of reserve currency and the simultaneous spike in gold could lead to some sort of event like this. Peter Schiff is effectively echoing Ray Dalio thought, and I don't even really agree necessarily, but I do think it is important to air this type of perspective in the midst of all this gold insanity that I certainly don't fully understand.
Yeah, because gold is real money. It's real lead. It's real tender. Right now we've got fiat currency, so they're doing exactly what the Romans did, you know, because they're not shrinking their army, they're increasing their army. They're not shrinking their defense spending, they're increasing it. You know, so they have to fund all this stuff, you know, so this is the reason why this dollar's not backed by anything. All right, so we are going to have, all right, this economic collapse. All right, and just like back then, all right, in the pagan Roman Empire, people were suffering at the end because the currency, the denarius, was devalued. All right, that's nothing compared. That's nothing compared to what's coming, man. All right. Nothing compared to what's coming. Go to Matthew. Alright, 24. Alright, and 21. Alright, Matthew 24, verse 21. Alright. Alright. Matthew 24 and 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So this is going to be a time that no one's ever seen before, man, what we experience. And remember, back in the day when they had different currency collapses, they had other currencies to back it up with, you know. For example, in Zimbabwe, they've had currency crisis for years. All right, so many people, they use dollars. When that dollar goes, that's it. And that's what they want. They want to break down this order to bring in their so-called New World Order. And that's why they call it a Great Reset. All right, verse 22. And except those days shall be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. There's going to be a lot of killing out here. All right, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Okay? All right, and we're going to need that in that time, you know, when Rome is collapsing. I mean, America's collapsing. I said Rome, but it really is Rome anyway. And you can see the parallels, man. All right? You know, and you can't tax your way into prosperity, you know, absolute madness, man. You know, this man should not be in power, and that's why it's a beautiful thing that he's never going to be in power anymore, because he corrupts everything, man. All right, Proverbs 20 and 23. Diverse weights are an abomination unto the Lord. All right, and a false balance is not good. All right, and a false balance is not good. Mucking around with your currency and devaluing it, all this stuff. And they did the same thing in the Weimar Republic in Germany before Hitler came to power. They did that on purpose, man. All right, to make him come in as the new chancellor, to be the great hero. all right? Because the desperation back then was incredible, because people were really, really suffering, all right? It's just going to be worse than that, all right? Proverbs 11:1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. You see? A just weight is his delight. You know, this business of interest rates and devaluing currency, this is all real bottom off the barrel stuff. You know, things that you should be touching with a 10-foot barge pole. And that's the reason why these nations are coming together, to do their own thing, like BRICS and all these other regions, the Muslim Brotherhood, etc. They're doing that for a reason, all right? If you have a system that is unjust, all right, and the head of that system, America, all right, aka Rome, or Rome all over again, when they can sanction you, when they can stop trade and do this and that, you just think to yourself, hang on, why do I need to do business with these people? So you move away. And that's what's happening. Everyone's moving away, all right, from America. They don't want anything to do with it, And this is a good channel that I found the other day, all right? Daniel Davis, Deep Dive, The guy on the right, he's been in the American military for years, Listen to what he's saying, because he knows exactly what's coming. All right, and he sees those parallels, seen America and past empires like Rome.
We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
So if you think that you're keeping the world afloat, and how dare this country not recognize my greatness and be grateful for what they're doing, and have the audacity to have their own way. I mean, it seems to me, Doug, before I even show you what Carney said, what he was referring to, this idea that you're mocking and denigrating anybody who's thinking about going their own way. Do you think that's going to cow other people not to do that, or make them more inclined to push back?
Well, that's obvious. I think more and more countries are going to end up migrating in the direction of BRICS. That was my point. The Chinese, whether you like them or not, are not inclined to impose any restrictions on the people that they lend money to or do business with. They want to be paid. They want to do business on a basis that is profitable for them, as well as hopefully for the business partner. But they're not interested in changing anybody's government. They're not interested in pushing them into a position of subordination. So I think what is happening in Canada, you're going to see elsewhere. Brazil is already with BRICS, obviously. I think we'll see more Latin American states that'll migrate in that direction. And I think Africa certainly will. And Africa is full of all the minerals and resources that the world could ever possibly want. You can fit the United States and several other countries into the continent of Africa. It's so huge. But he's not thinking in those terms. And I think, unfortunately, some of what he says goes down well with some of the MAGA base that like to hear that. But then again, they're the same crowd that is part of what I call the bombs away club. Oh, we bombed somebody yesterday. That's great. We're great. We're wonderful. We bombed them. But I think the majority of Americans are not really very impressed with that approach.
Well, and it does appear that Prime Minister Carney does seem to agree with your assessment about where things are going. And he took the very public opportunity yesterday at Davos to make this statement.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited.
I wonder who he's talking about. He's talking about America. Babylon the Great. Okay? And that's our ally of them. Cursing them out. You know? On one hand, they're saying, look, we're partners. The next minute they're saying, you should be grateful about this, grateful about that. You know, we protect you and all this madness. So you can clearly see that there's a rift already there, you know, between this great whore, which is America, and the 10 horns, you know, the EU countries. You can see the rift there. And it's in Bible prophecy. That's what's going to happen, because in the end, even they're going to shoot all their missiles on America, you know, when we have this Third World War, you know. But the other guy, just before this clip came on, he said something that's true. If you want to do business with China, all these Arab countries or African countries, all right, you want that? All right, we'll ship it to you. Here's the fee, buy, boom. But in America, no, they want to indoctrinate you, all right, and they want you to drink of that cup, which is full of filthiness and abominations, man. Her philosophies, her doctrines, you know. You can do business with Babylon the Great, America, all right, but what else comes with that? You know, what else comes with that? You know, that's why you look at this chart here. You know, what comes is her philosophies, her doctrine, democracy, homosexuality, covetousness. You know, all of these things. When you actually do business with America, Babylon the Great, you know, you're going to be influenced in a negative way in this regard. Democracy, religion, etc. You can see that even recently when they had the protests in Iran. Oh yeah, if you don't stop killing them, we're going to come in and we're going to help them and all this rubbish. No, you're not going to do nothing, man. You ain't going to do nothing, you know? And again, it's this philosophy of them thinking that they're the world's policemen. And they're not, you know? But you have to be very careful about these people, because a good example was the whole, what's it called? The whole war in Gaza, you know? When they went to do negotiations with Hamas, all right? When they were going to the building to do negotiation, they tried to kill him, you know? I mean, you're here, go into a different country to negotiate some kind of peace and truce, and then you bomb them on the way, you know? They're coming to you for peace talks, and on the way you bomb them? It's incredible, man. All right, so you can see that there's a rift in this alliance. Okay? There's a rift in this alliance, and it's good, because that's what's going to happen, because in Bible prophecy, that's what happens, man. We'll go back to Revelations 17. All right. Revelation 17. There's only so much you can take, man. You know? In Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, alright, which is those EU countries, alright, these shall hate the whore. They're going to hate America, alright, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Alright, burn her with fire. So they're going to get to a point where, listen, you know what I mean, just, you know what I mean, fire missile 8, 9, 10, all the thousands of missiles, they just gonna say, listen, we just want to get rid of this country, you know, America, which should be really called Rome, because that's all that it does. I mean, in Rome you had what's it called, festivals where they used to be outside and, you know, do orgies and stuff like that. Go look up Pompeii. This is all real degenerate stuff, you know. So all this stuff is of this world, And we're not of this world. If you're a part of the elect, you ain't of this world, man. Alright? So you're going to be happy to see the 10 horns, alright? Burn the great whore, which is America, with fire. Alright? Because all she's doing is spreading, her wicked philosophies around the world, man. And all these countries have had enough. That's why they're doing BRICS. So just like this guy said, they're moving away from America and that system, man. Okay? And they're starting to feel very lonely. Okay? And in the end, what is the end goal? The end goal is for us to worship this beast by having an RFID chip placed in you. And that gives them total control, man. Total control. Alright? That's just... It's 2 Thessalonians 2. Alright? 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you by any means. Alright? For that day shall not come, except there will be a falling away first. And we did fall away. Alright? In 70 AD, man. We had to flee to the mountains, man. Alright? And the mountains is where? Mainly in Egypt. We had to flee into Africa to escape that Roman persecution, man. Alright? And again, it was Rome, And this is how you know we're at the end, because the prophets of Yahweh Shem Shai always prophesied against these kingdoms, right? So that's why you see all these Israelite groups, Great Millstone, from the apostles on down, and other Israelite groups out there, professing the downfall of this wicked kingdom. So that's another indicator that we're in these last days, man. Okay? Let no man deceive you by any means, that day shall not come, except there be a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed. And he's being revealed, man. The son of perdition. What does perdition mean? Destruction. Okay? Okay? Verse 4. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, and that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So this man has a God complex. All right? And that's where we segue into the MOTB, because if you take that chip, all right, you're just going to be a robot. All right, you're bowing down to the system of Rome. All right, aka really America, Babylon the Great. That's what you're doing. Okay, I got this here. I looked this up, right, in the Roman Empire, and I put, did Romans commonly brand their slaves? All right, we know what branding is, when you get the iron and you put it on a horse or a cow to brand it, so it's your property. They used to do that with us in slavery. Okay? Alright, it says, yes, the Romans commonly branded their slaves, particularly as a punishment for running away. Alright? Or to identify them as property. Alright, runaway slaves were often marked on the forehead with the letter F, which is for fugitive. Other marks include like stop me, alright, I am a runaway. So the Romans used to brand their slaves. Okay, and that's what this microchip is. Alright, it's an incision into you, man. Okay, for all of you to get that chip in, they have to pierce your skin. Okay, and that matches exactly what the scriptures say. Okay, Revelations 13 and 16. And he calls of all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark upon their right hand or in their foreheads. Okay, so what's important about this mark? Alright, that no man might buy or sell, alright, save he that had the mark. So you're going to buy nothing or sell nothing unless you have this mark, this implanted device, or the number of the beast, or the number of his name. Okay. Verse 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man, and his number is 600 threescore and 6. And what does that mean? 666. Okay, that's the man's number. All right. So if you take this chip, you're basically worshipping, all right, the so-called white man, all right, and his beast system. This will be your God now. You know, this will be your God. Okay. That's why we pray that, Lord, we're worthy, you know, to have a different mark. And what mark is that? The mark of exemption, man. All right, that the elect is going to have. Okay, let's get that in Ezekiel. Let's see here. Ezekiel 9 and 4. All right. And the Lord said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is a people. All right. All right. Rather than a place. And who's that? Israelites, man. All 12 tribes. And set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. All right. So the mark of exemption, because the word mark there is a different mark from the one in Revelations. All right, that's Karagma, but this is Fawa, what it means to be exempt from judgment. You know, that's like a golden ticket. Okay. That's a get out of jail. You know, that's a get out of jail free card. But that, in order for you to have that, you have to have the faith of Yahweh Shem Yashai. See, Mark. I say, look, Mark. What does it say down here? A sign, as a sign of exemption from judgment. And who's going to have that mark upon them? The elect, man. All right, the elect is going to have that. Okay. But in order for them to get that, they have to have faith, man. Because, you know, the times that we're coming in for, you know, we are faith-based Israelites, man. You know what I mean? It's all about faith. So for all those people that are mocking about, I mean, if you don't have faith, well, what's the point? Why are you here? Everyone has faith in something. We said this the other day at camp, man. Like when you work and you get paid monthly, all right? You don't work one day and get paid at the end of the day, which you should do, but in this society you don't. You wait till the end of the month. So you have faith in that, in the meantime, that you're going to get paid. All right? So if you have faith in that, how much more your Heavenly Father in heaven? All right? If you're diligently seeking Him, He's going to give you that exemption from judgment if you're part of the elect, man. Okay? All right? And it's a beautiful thing, because once the elect is sealed, then this kingdom can come. All right? And that's when we can live. Right now, we can't live because this wicked revival of the Roman Empire, America, is still up and running. All right? And it's taking away what? Peace from the earth. Like it said in the book of Revelations, chapter 20. All right? This is Ecclesiasticus 10 and 8. It's the Apocrypha. Because of the unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit. And America has all of these riches that have gone by deceit, man. The kingdom is translated from one people to another. And that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for this wicked Greco-Roman Empire, all right, you know, to be destroyed. And Yahushua's kingdom to be established. All right? That's what we're waiting for, man. All right? And that's what we have to have faith in. Okay? So listen, I'm going to leave it at that. But listen, I pray you were edified. Until next lesson, Shalom.